From now on, we'll handle the house ourselves, so find somewhere else to live," my brother and his wife said coldly. Shockingly, my mother sided with them, treating me as if I were a burden. Did they even realize that I had been the one covering most of the household expenses? Their disrespect felt like a slap in the face, and I silently resolved to take action. My name is Carrie, a 30-year-old woman currently living in my parents' home. After graduating from college, I embarked on the journey of building a career, only to find the harsh realities of the professional world weighing heavily on me. Exhausted and overwhelmed, I made the difficult decision to move back home. At first, I relied on unemployment benefits while searching for a new job. Then I discovered the world of remote work, where I began as a freelance engineer, leveraging my scientific background. The work started small with modest income, but the ability to work independently and avoid the office grind was a relief. Slowly, I gained experience and confidence, taking on larger projects and growing my income. Within a year, I was earning as much as a salaried employee. But instead of pride, I was met with skepticism at home, especially from my mother. My father understood when I explained the nature of my work, but my mother, stuck in traditional ways, viewed my home-based job as unreliable. "How long do you plan to stay home?" she often asked, her tone laced with disapproval. "At first, I thought you were recovering, but it's been over 2 years now. You should be working outside like everyone else." No matter how hard I tried, she refused to acknowledge my career. I showed her client emails, detailed project reports, and even my salary statements, yet she remained dismissive. "You're just doing something online," she scoffed. "How do we know it's not some kind of shady business or scam?" Her mistrust stung. "I get paid regularly, Mom. It's a legitimate job." I defended myself time and time again, but her suspicions only deepened. "How do I know it's not just unemployment benefits?" she questioned. "You can't collect those forever, you know." Her doubts seemed endless. No matter how much evidence I presented, convincing her of the validity of my career felt like an impossible task. I had thought about living on my own, but I hadn't saved enough money to make it a reality. Around the same time, my father's health started to decline. His legs and back had gotten so bad that he needed nursing care. With his early retirement, he was also facing a sudden loss of income. One evening, I approached him. "Dad, are you okay?" He gave me a tired smile. "Oh, Carrie, I didn't mean to worry you. I have my pension, so I'll manage somehow. But with how much your mother spends, are you sure you can handle things?" His voice carried the weight of worry, and I could see it in his face. "I guess we'll just have to make do with what savings we have," he added, sounding uncertain about the future. For years, my father had supported me through college, and even when I moved back home to recover from some mental health struggles, he was always there to help. Now that he was in this situation, I started questioning whether it was right for me to pursue living independently while leaving him to fend for himself. My mother, too, seemed overwhelmed by how quickly my father's condition had worsened. As I stayed home, I began to feel that maybe it was my turn to step up and give back to my family. "Don't worry, Dad," I told him one day. "I'll take care of the family from now on." He looked at me with surprise. "Really? But can you even manage that with your income?" "Don't worry," I reassured him. "My finances are stable now." To ease his doubts, I showed him my bank account. My father had always been understanding of my circumstances, but even he seemed surprised. "Carrie, I didn't realize you were doing so well," he said, a hint of relief in his voice. "Yes, things have been going better for me recently," I replied. "Then, would you be able to help us out a little?" "Of course," I answered without hesitation. "You've always been there for me, so now it's my turn to support you." My father thanked me, and from that point on, I began taking on the financial responsibilities of the household. I started covering our living expenses, his medical bills, and other costs. Each month, I transferred a fixed amount to his bank account to help keep everything running smoothly. Since my mother had been using my father's credit card, I decided to create a new card in my name. I kept the main card for myself and gave her a supplementary one to manage household purchases. My father, on his part, saved as much as he could and encouraged my mother to do the same. Together, we adjusted to the new normal and found ways to keep moving forward as a family. My mother confronted my father one day. "So what now? Should we just kick Carrie out of the house?" My father, always level-headed, responded firmly. "Carrie is contributing financially. Things would be much harder for us without her." "Is that really true?" my mother asked, her tone skeptical. She didn't fully trust the extent of my support, but after much persuasion from my father, she eventually agreed to let me stay. From then on, I continued working while helping out at home. But my mother's attitude toward me grew increasingly harsh. She seemed to take my help for granted and was often critical. "Can you finish your chores any faster?" she would say. "I'm sorry, Mom," I'd reply. "It's just hard to balance everything with my job." "You keep using that as an excuse. How hard can it really be?" No matter what I said, she didn't seem to understand or care. Over time, it became clear to me that our relationship was falling apart. In contrast, my father saw and appreciated the effort I was putting in. His support made a huge difference and gave me the strength to keep going. That's how we lived for a year, navigating these tensions. But then, everything changed when my father's health took a sudden turn for the worse. He was hospitalized, and I began visiting him every day. "Hey, Dad, how are you feeling today?" I'd ask. He'd smile weakly. "Thank you, Carrie. I don't think I'll be getting better anytime soon, but I just hope I'm not too much of a burden on you." "Don't say that, Dad," I reassured him. "Taking care of you has never felt like a burden." Still, he looked at me with a knowing expression. "I know things between you and your mother haven't been easy." He wasn't wrong. After his hospitalization, the tension with my mother worsened, and living under the same roof with her became stifling. Yet, despite the strain, I couldn't abandon my desire to support both my parents. I reminded myself of all the things my mother had done for me in the past, how she made my lunch every day when I was a student and cooked dinner with care every night. Those memories kept me grounded, even in the most challenging moments. But then something happened that completely changed the way I saw everything. One evening, I overheard voices in the living room. "Kevin, you're late. I've been waiting for you," my mother said. "Sorry, Mom. I've been busy," my brother replied. "Hi, mother-in-law," said Mary, my brother's wife. "Hello, Mary. Thanks for coming." My mother responded warmly. Their presence caught me off guard. As I entered the room, Kevin and Mary turned to me with cold expressions. "Kevin, what's going on?" I asked, confused. He responded nonchalantly. "We're going to be living here from now on."
"What?"
"Why?" I exclaimed. "Mom was worried about you being here alone with Dad in the hospital," Kevin explained. I turned to my mother, shocked, but she avoided my gaze. Mary chimed in with a smirk. "We're here to help and make things easier for Mom. And for you, Carrie." There was something unsettling in her tone, as though her words carried a hidden implication. "Thank you, both of you," my mother said. Then she turned to me and added pointedly, "Carrie, I hope you'll step up and do your part around here. It wouldn't be fair otherwise." It was clear she was back on the same topic of pushing me to do more. Although I hadn't anticipated my brother and his wife moving in, I couldn't help but wonder why they were truly here. Kevin had a stable job and income. Wouldn't they be fine living on their own? As it turned out, living with Kevin and Mary was more difficult than I had imagined. "Carrie, aren't you up yet? Get up and make breakfast," Mary shouted one morning, pounding on my door.
"I am awake."
"I've been working since early this morning," I replied, trying to stay calm. Despite being a morning person who worked best during those quiet hours, Mary wasn't interested.
"Well,
"Then stop working and make breakfast already," she snapped. Life in the house was quickly becoming unbearable. "Do I really have to do everything myself?" I asked, feeling the tension rise. Our family had never been one for formal breakfasts. Mornings were usually relaxed, with everyone eating whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. My mother and my brother's wife, Mary, were both at home, so I thought it was reasonable for Mary to handle breakfast for her own husband. But Mary had a different view. We're living together now, so shouldn't we cooperate? She said with a smile that felt anything but friendly. I begrudgingly joined them in preparing breakfast, but my efforts didn't seem to please anyone. Is this what you made? This isn't nearly enough, Mary complained, her tone sharp. I had made scrambled eggs, a fresh lettuce salad, buttered toast, and sausages, what I thought was a perfectly acceptable breakfast. If it's not enough, then you don't have to eat it, I replied, my frustration finally bubbling to the surface. They looked at me, stunned by my response.
What kind of attitude is that? Who do you think you are?
Kevin and Mary demanded, their voices dripping with contempt. Their complaints had already wasted a significant chunk of my work time. Without another word, I went to my room, grabbed my laptop, and packed my bag. As I headed for the door, Kevin called after me. Hey, where do you think you're going? I didn't answer. Instead, I went straight to the hospital to see my father. When I arrived, he noticed something was wrong right away. Carrie, you look upset. What happened? I poured out everything to him. At first, he seemed surprised, but his expression quickly turned serious. I had no idea they were treating you like this, he said, his voice heavy with concern.
I'm sorry, Carrie.
Don't let this weigh you down. You deserve to live your life the way you want. Your happiness is what matters most to me. His words gave me the strength to make a decision I had been hesitant about for a long time. I was going to leave home. That evening, when I returned to the house, I was greeted by a scene straight out of a drama. My mother, Kevin, and Mary were all waiting for me, their faces tense and serious. Where have you been? My brother demanded angrily as soon as I walked through the door. Shouldn't you be at work? I asked, trying to stay calm. Because of you, I had to take the day off, he snapped back. I couldn't hide my shock. How could you take a day off for something like this? It surprised me how irresponsibly my brother treated his job.
Meanwhile,
both his and Mary's voices grew louder and more aggressive. Get out of here, my brother finally shouted.
What?
Why? I asked, stunned. We've decided the three of us will live here now, he declared. If you don't like it, you can leave. We don't need someone as overbearing as you meddling in our lives. Mary chimed in with a smug look, fully backing my brother's words. Then, to my disbelief, my mother joined in. Carrie, it's time for you to move on. You don't need to stay here anymore now that your father isn't around, she said coldly. Her words cut deeper than I expected. I had been managing the family finances and supporting the household for so long. Did she even realize how much she depended on me? My mother indulged in shopping for expensive branded goods every month. What would she do when her allowance suddenly disappeared? Their complete disregard for everything I'd done for them left me furious. No matter how much I tried to explain my contributions, they ignored me, dismissing my efforts entirely. Their behavior was beyond disrespectful. I couldn't take it anymore. That's when I came up with a plan. First, I transferred the money from the account linked to my mother's credit card into another account that only I controlled. I knew she'd be in for a shock when her card stopped working. Then, I set up a separate account solely for my father's medical expenses, transferring funds from the main family account. My mother had no knowledge of this new account. With these changes, the burden of managing household expenses would now fall on my brother and his wife. I wasn't sure how much my brother earned, but I knew this would be a wake-up call for them. Once everything was in place, I packed my belongings and turned to face them. I'm leaving this house, I announced, feeling both relieved and resolute. My mother, brother, and sister-in-law looked genuinely shocked when I announced I was leaving. For all the harassment they'd thrown my way, they clearly hadn't expected me to take real action. But as I observed their expressions, it almost seemed like they were enjoying the situation. Finally, you're leaving. You were such a nuisance. You're not coming back, are you? My brother said with a sneer. I couldn't believe how cruel their words were. Of course not. Don't even think about contacting me, I replied firmly. As I walked out, they smiled smugly, as though they'd won. But in my heart, I smiled back. I knew what lay ahead for them, and I was ready to start fresh. My new home was everything I'd hoped for. peaceful and free of drama. For the first time in a long while, I had the space to focus on myself and my work. I felt completely rejuvenated, and life finally felt lighter. Then one day, as I had half expected, my phone rang. It was my brother. "I thought I told you not to call me. What do you want?" I said, keeping my tone cold. "Carrie, is it true that you handled all the money for the household?" he asked, his voice tinged with urgency. "Oh, that? Yes, it's true. Why are you only asking about this now?" "Why didn't you tell us?" he stammered, clearly flustered. "I did mention it several times. But neither you nor Mom believed me, remember?" "Well, Mom said some things, and I guess I was just a bit confused," he admitted reluctantly. "Then it's not my fault, is it?" I said sharply.
No.
"It's not, but we're having serious money problems. Mom's spending hasn't slowed down, and we haven't been able to cover the house expenses or utilities." "Yes, because I was the one managing all of that. Now that I'm not there, it's your responsibility," I replied coolly. "Carrie, please. I need your help. Could you transfer some money into my account?" "I'm begging you," he pleaded. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You must be joking. Don't you work at a big company? Isn't that how you've been supporting yourself?" There was a pause on the line before he admitted sheepishly, "Actually, I got fired." "What?" I asked, stunned. "How did that happen?" "I made a big mistake," my brother admitted reluctantly. "Was it before you moved back into our parents' house?" I asked. His hesitation and silence were all the answer I needed. My brother's tone grew desperate. "Please, Carrie, you have to help us. We're almost out of savings." Soon after, my mother called me as well, her voice filled with panic. "Your father is furious about this. He says he won't contribute any more money to the household. We're in a terrible situation." I listened calmly before replying, "You know, I've already done more than enough to support you all. You're healthy and capable. So it's time for you to step up and take care of yourselves. I wish you the best of luck." From the other end of the line, I heard their voices grow frantic. "Carrie, wait. Please don't do this." But I hung up. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to sacrifice my well-being any longer. As for my father, he decided he couldn't return to his old life with my mother. With the help of a lawyer, he arranged to move to a new place where he could focus on his recovery. I visited him every day, and we enjoyed peaceful, meaningful time together. Meanwhile, my brother and mother faced the consequences of their choices. My brother ended up moving into a small, modest apartment and living frugally. My mother, who had spent most of her life as a homemaker, found it challenging to adapt to the working world. Initially, my brother's wife, Mary, took on much of the responsibility for their finances, but the mounting pressure eventually drove her to leave. Left to fend for themselves, my brother and mother began working together, but their debts continued to pile up. While I occasionally felt concern for them, I knew I couldn't return to that situation. They needed to find their own way. Now, I'm thriving in my new life. My home is peaceful, my work is fulfilling, and my income continues to grow steadily. I'm also pursuing new opportunities and enjoying the freedom I've worked so hard to achieve. Most importantly, I visit my father every day. His cheerful smile is a reminder of the strength we've both found through these challenges. This peace and freedom, it's the life I've earned, and I'm determined to cherish it.